The hall glowed with warm golden lights, making the entire place look almost unreal. The decorations were elegant, the tables were covered with fine cloth, and the glasses sparkled even before anyone lifted them. People walked in wearing expensive clothes, laughing softly as if even their voices had to match the elegance of the place. They greeted one another politely, with a sort of practiced smile that showed comfort, confidence, and the certainty that they belonged in such a place. In the middle of all this, Lena stood quietly near a corner, close to a side entrance. She wasn't dressed poorly, but she was clearly not dressed like the others. Her clothes were simple and carefully ironed, and her shoes were clean but old. She didn't try to blend in or pretend to be something she wasn't. She held her hands together, trying to stay close to her aunt, who had been working at the venue since early morning. Her aunt had brought her along because she didn't want Lena to stay alone at home all day. Besides, the older woman trusted her niece more than anyone else. And even though tonight was a fancy charity event, she didn't mind having Lena wait for her in the back area. Lena often came along when her aunt worked late shifts. She would sit quietly, read a book, listen to music, or simply explore the quiet corners of the places her aunt cleaned. But tonight felt different even before anything began. The hall was fuller, the guests were dressed in a way Lena almost never saw in real life, and the atmosphere had a kind of pressure to it. As if everyone was trying to look as perfect as the event planners hoped, Lena wasn't used to events like this. She looked at everything with quiet fascination. But she also kept her distance, knowing this world wasn't hers. She had grown up in a small apartment where the sound of leaking pipes was more familiar than music, and where dreams often had to wait behind basic needs. Still, she had one dream she never let go of: music. She loved the piano more than anything else. Even though she didn't own one, even though she had never taken real lessons, the sound of the instrument lived in her heart. She practiced on an old keyboard that was missing several keys, and sometimes she recreated sounds in her mind when the keyboard stopped working. Music wasn't a hobby for her. It was a place where she felt safe. The event tonight included a music performance. A well-known pianist had been invited to play for the crowd. The guests had been talking about it since they arrived. They were expecting elegance, skill, and a sound that matched the high expectations of the rich audience. But unexpected things happen when no one plans for them. And tonight, something had already gone wrong. The pianist who was supposed to perform had been stuck in heavy traffic on the other side of the city. A large accident had blocked the road, and the organizers were panicking backstage. They had checked their phones every minute, spoken to drivers, assistants, and anyone who might bring a solution, but nothing changed. The performer was not going to make it on time. Guests had already started asking when the performance would begin. Backstage, tension grew. A few staff members tried to come up with backup options, but nothing seemed suitable for a crowd like this. The organizers didn't want to bring in a local band or play recorded tracks. This was a night meant to impress. Lena could feel the nervous energy around her. Workers rushed by with stressed expressions. The event coordinator kept repeating, "This can't be happening tonight of all nights." People whispered, phones buzzed, and the noise behind the scenes didn't match the calm that the guests saw in the hall. Lena stood quietly, watching her aunt fold napkins for one of the last-minute requests from the serving team. She didn't know everything that was going on, but she could tell something wasn't right. "What happened?" she asked softly. Her aunt sighed as she placed a stack of folded napkins on a tray. "The pianist who was supposed to play is stuck. They don't know what to do now." Lena felt a strange flutter in her chest. Not excitement, not fear, something in between. She didn't say anything, though. She knew better than to get involved. Her aunt continued, "They're trying to figure out who can fill in, but this is a high-end crowd. They don't want just anyone playing." She shook her head and gave a tired smile. "Anyway, it's none of our concern. Just stay close." Lena nodded, but her thoughts weren't calm. Somewhere inside her, something small and unspoken began to stir. The organizer, a man with a perfectly pressed suit, walked by with two assistants. "We can't delay any longer," he said, checking his watch repeatedly. "The guests are waiting. We need something. Should we ask the band from upstairs?" One assistant asked. "No," the organizer said sharply. They're not the right fit for this event. It walked off quickly, deep in conversation. Lena's eyes drifted toward the grand piano placed on the stage in the center of the hall. She had seen it when she first arrived. It was beautiful, large, polished, and so perfect it almost didn't look real to her. She had never touched a piano like that in her life. She had never even been close to one. The thought of sitting there felt impossible. The thought of playing in front of hundreds of wealthy and expectant people felt even more unrealistic. But the thought didn't leave her. She looked at the piano again and again, her heart picking up pace each time. Her aunt noticed. "What are you thinking?" she whispered. Lena shook her head quickly. "Nothing. I'm not thinking anything. I'm just looking." "Good," her aunt said gently. "This isn't our world. We're just here to work." Lena nodded again, but her thoughts were louder than ever. Minutes passed. The murmurs grew louder. Someone in the crowd asked loudly, "Is the performance starting soon?" The organizers exchanged helpless looks. Finally, the main coordinator took a deep breath and approached the staff. "Does anyone here play the piano?" he asked almost desperately. The workers froze. A few shook their heads. Some looked away immediately. No one wanted to be dragged into something this risky. The coordinator rubbed his forehead. "Anyone at all? Even basic skills?" Lena felt her aunt lightly touch her arm as if warning her not to move or speak, but a voice inside her whispered louder than her aunt's warning, "This is my one chance." Her hands trembled slightly. She didn't want to embarrass herself. She didn't want to embarrass her aunt. She didn't want people laughing at her, but she also didn't want regret. She didn't want to walk out of this place knowing she stayed silent when her heart knew something else. Before she could overthink, before fear could pull her back, she heard her own voice escape quietly. I can play." Her aunt turned sharply to her. Lena, the coordinator, stopped, eyes widening. "You can play?" Lena swallowed hard. "Yes. A little." He looked at her, taking in her simple clothes and shy posture. He clearly didn't expect much, but desperation made him consider it. "Have you learned formally?" "No," Lena admitted honestly. "But I can play." He hesitated. The assistants exchanged uncertain looks. Her aunt whispered urgently, "Lena, you don't have to do this." Lena looked at her aunt with soft eyes. "I know, but let me try, please." Her aunt's expression softened with worry and love mixed together. She didn't want Lena to be judged. She didn't want her niece to feel hurt or humiliated. But she also saw the determination in Lena's eyes, something she rarely saw so brightly. The coordinator finally exhaled. "We don't have a choice. We need someone now. If you think you can do it, come with me." Lena felt her legs turn weak, but she nodded. Her aunt squeezed her hand for support, whispering, "Be brave." The coordinator led her toward the stage entrance. Every step felt heavier, like walking toward something she wasn't ready for. She could feel many eyes turning toward her even before she reached the piano. The hall quieted a little as people noticed a girl. They didn't recognize approaching the stage. Some looked confused. Some whispered to each other. A few raised their eyebrows as if they wanted to laugh. Lena felt all of it. Every stare, every whisper, every doubt. She wanted to run. She wanted to turn back and hide behind her aunt, but she kept walking. When she reached the piano, she stood still for a moment. Her hands felt cold. Her breathing was short, but the instrument in front of her felt like something familiar in a room full of strangers. Slowly, gently, she took the piano seat. The murmurs grew louder. "Who is she?" Someone whispered. "Is she part of the staff?" Another asked. "She looks so young," someone else murmured. Lena heard everything, but she kept her eyes on the keys. She placed her trembling fingers above them, but didn't press anything yet. She closed her eyes. The noise faded. The world around her softened. She wasn't in the hall anymore. In her mind, she was back in her small room, sitting at her broken keyboard, imagining the music she wished she could play. She took a slow breath, and with all the courage she had gathered from every hard day in her life, she let her fingers touch the keys in that moment. No one expected what was about to happen next. When Lena's fingers touched the first few keys, the hall was still buzzing with low whispers. People were confused, annoyed, or simply curious about why a girl they did not recognize was sitting at such an important place. But Lena didn't let herself look at them. She kept her eyes closed for a moment, allowing her hands to settle and her breathing to steady. The first notes she played were soft, almost fragile, like they were trying to find their place in the room. But they were gentle in a way that made a few people fall quiet without meaning to. It wasn't the sound they expected, not the strong, polished beginning of a professional, but something simpler, more delicate. Lena didn't start with any famous piece because she wasn't trained to play those perfectly. Instead, she played something she had practiced many times on her old keyboard. It was a melody she had created by listening to rain through her window and imagining the rhythm of falling drops at first. A few people exchanged glances that said this is all they could find. But as the music continued, something shifted in the air. The melody had a calmness that didn't belong to the crowded hall. It felt like someone had opened a small window into another world. Still, not everyone accepted it right away. There were whispers that grew louder when the melody softened. "She's not the performer, is she?" Someone muttered. "I thought they hired a professional." Another guest whispered. A woman near the front folded her arms and shook her head. "This is unbelievable. How can they let a girl who clearly works here take the stage?" Lena didn't hear those words clearly, but she sensed the mood all the same. She felt judgment like a cold breeze against her back. She could almost feel the doubt pressing on her shoulders. For a moment, her fingers trembled, and one wrong note slipped through. She panicked inside. One mistake. One tiny note, and she felt like the entire room saw it. Her heart started beating faster. Her fingers stiffened. She feared the rest of the melody might fall apart in her hands. She wanted to stop. She wanted to get up and run away from the stairs. The whispers. The weight of standing in front of people who believed she didn't belong. And then she heard someone quietly whisper from the side of the hall, faint, soft, but warm. "You can do it." It was her aunt. Her voice wasn't loud, and maybe no one else heard it, but Lena did. It was enough. She took another breath, deeper this time, letting her shoulders relax. The tremble in her fingers softened as she pressed the next note gently. She remembered the nights she spent practicing alone, the evenings when her aunt cooked dinner in the background while Lena tried to learn chords by watching old videos on her cracked phone screen. The early mornings when she woke up before school to play hand-drawn notes she had created for herself. Music never judged her. Music never asked who she was or what she wore or where she came from, so she played again, more confidently. The shift was small, but noticeable. The notes became smoother. Her hands moved with a natural grace that came from years of silent practice. The melody began to float through the hall in a way that slowly pulled people into it. A man near the back lowered his drink and listened properly for the first time. A couple who had been talking stopped mid-sentence. Even the servers paused while carrying trays. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. There was a feeling in her music that expensive lessons couldn't teach and fancy stages couldn't create. It came from the quiet corners of her life, from all the days she had felt unseen. It came from longing, from hope, from every moment she had dreamed of touching a real piano. Slowly, the whispering faded. Not because someone asked the guests to quiet down, but because the sound she created made them want to listen. Her melody didn't try to impress. It simply told a story of someone who had always listened to the world more than she spoke, a story of someone who held dreams gently so they wouldn't break. The crowd didn't know all this, but they felt it. Lena kept playing, each note weaving her emotions into the air. She began to forget where she was. The fancy hall disappeared in her mind. The judging eyes faded away. She wasn't performing for strangers anymore. She was playing for herself, for the music she loved, and for the memory of someone who had always told her that she could be more. A soft ache filled her chest as she remembered her mother, her gentle smile, her warm voice, and the nights when she would hum lullabies that made the world feel safe. Lena played as if she were speaking to her mother through the keys. As the melody grew fuller, the hall changed again. What had been a place filled with tension and impatience transformed into a room filled with a strange softness. People sat still without meaning to. The energy in the air shifted to something quieter, deeper. The woman who had folded her arms earlier slowly lowered them. Her expression softened just a little. A teenage boy at one of the tables leaned forward, completely drawn in. Even the coordinator, who stood nervously at the back, found himself breathing out in relief. He didn't know why this simple melody had such an effect. He didn't know who Lena truly was or how she had learned to play. But he knew the moment felt different. Lena's aunt watched from the side of the stage, her hands pressed together near her chest, her eyes watery with pride. She always knew her niece had something special inside her. Not fame, not ego, not the urge to show off, but something quieter, something that touched hearts as Lena played. Memories filled her mind, moments from her childhood, moments when life felt too heavy, moments when she thought music was the only thing that understood her. She remembered sitting on her bedroom floor with her small keyboard, quietly playing while the world around her felt too loud. She remembered how she used to imagine playing on a real stage. Even though she never believed it would happen, now she was here. And even though the room was filled with wealth and elegance she had never known, she felt the piano belonged to her more than to anyone else at that moment. The piece she played changed slowly, moving from soft and gentle to slightly stronger and warmer. The melody grew richer as her confidence returned. Her fingers glided over the keys with a natural rhythm that didn't need perfection to feel beautiful. A small gasp rose from someone in the audience as the melody shifted into a deeper, more emotional part. It carried a feeling of longing, something everyone in the room, no matter how rich or composed, recognized in their own way. That recognition changed everything. It made the guests listen, not just with their ears, but with their memories, with their own hidden emotions, with the part of themselves they rarely showed. When Lena reached the middle of her piece, the hall had turned completely silent. Not one whisper, not one clink of glass, not one distant conversation. The silence wasn't forced. It wasn't polite. It was natural, like everyone had forgotten they were supposed to be attending a formal event. They were simply listening. The organizer's assistants exchanged surprised looks. One of them whispered, "She's actually good." The others shook their heads softly. "It's not just that. There's something in the way she plays." Lena didn't know what the audience felt. She had closed herself inside the music too deeply to notice. She didn't dare lift her head. She feared she might break the spell. She saw their faces. But her hands continued moving with a calm freedom she rarely felt anywhere else. As the melody moved toward its last part, her breath became steady. She felt warm inside, like something heavy had been lifted from her shoulders. The final notes softened again, fading toward a gentle end. Her fingers slowed, pressing each key with careful tenderness, as if she were placing something precious into the air. The last note stretched quietly, then slipped away. The entire hall remained still. No applause yet, no words. Just a quiet stillness filled with the echo of her music. Lena opened her eyes slowly. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't sure what to expect. She wasn't sure if they liked it or if they thought it was too simple. She gently lifted her hands from the keys and placed them on her lap. Then, the silence broke not with a whisper or a cough, but with something she never imagined. A soft clap. One, then another, then a few more, and then the entire hall began to applaud. Louder and louder, until it filled the room like a wave. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She felt her eyes sting with emotion she couldn't control. She had come to help her aunt. She had never expected to sit at a grand piano in front of a crowd like this. She never expected people who doubted her to clap for her, but they did. They clapped for the girl they once whispered about, the girl they thought wasn't meant for the stage, the girl they underestimated the moment she walked toward the piano. And as Lena sat there, taking in the applause with her trembling hands resting on her lap, she felt something she had never felt at this level before. She belonged, even if just for this moment. She belonged. The applause continued, strong and honest. And Lena tried to hold on to every sound of it. She didn't know what the night would bring next, But something inside her whispered again, much clearer this time, "This is only the beginning." The applause seemed to rise and fall like a breath that belonged to the entire hall. And Lena sat still, almost afraid that moving too quickly might break the moment. She had never heard such loud applause directed at her. In fact, she barely remembered ever being applauded at all, not like this, not by people dressed in fine suits and elegant dresses. Her heart felt warm and unsteady at the same time. She didn't know if she was allowed to smile or bow or simply leave the stage. She had never been taught how to behave in a setting like this. No one had prepared her for the feeling of so many eyes watching her, not with judgment now, but with genuine surprise and soft admiration. The applause continued, growing into a sound that wrapped around her like a gentle embrace. Her aunt stood at the side, both hands covering her mouth, her eyes emotional and shining. She looked proud in a way that could make anyone cry. The event coordinator, who earlier had looked stressed and almost desperate, now exhaled with a relief so deep it softened his entire face. He couldn't believe it. He had expected a disaster, maybe even complaints from the guests, but instead found himself staring at this quiet girl who had saved the moment with nothing but her heart. When the applause finally began to settle, Lena rose from the piano bench slowly. Her legs felt weak, but she stood straight. She gave a small, humble nod, something she had seen performers do on television. The crowd responded with another wave of claps as she stepped away from the piano. Her fingers brushed the polished wood one more time. She felt a strange comfort in that small touch, as if the instrument itself understood her, as if it was saying goodbye. She took one step, then another, moving toward the steps on the side of the stage. She could feel several eyes still on her, but this time the stares didn't feel hostile or doubtful. They felt different, curious, maybe even impressed. A few guests whispered to each other, though their tone had changed. "Who is she? I've never seen her before. She plays with such feeling. It doesn't sound trained, but it sounds real. She surprised us." Their words floated in the air, and Lena tried not to look nervous as she made her way down the stage. Inside, however, her heart beat wildly. When she reached her aunt, the older woman pulled her into a quick hug. "You were wonderful," her aunt whispered, her voice shaking slightly. "Just wonderful." Lena didn't know what to say. She felt like her voice might break if she tried to speak. So she simply nodded, holding on to the warmth of her aunt's hands, before they could move away. The coordinator approached them. He looked stunned, as if still processing everything. "That was incredible," he said to Lena. "Truly, you saved us tonight." Lena lowered her gaze shyly. "I'm glad I could help." "You did more than help," the coordinator said. "I think everyone felt something when you played." She didn't know how to respond to that. Compliments like this were foreign to her. She wasn't used to being seen, let alone admired. But the coordinator wasn't the only one approaching. A small group of guests, dressed in expensive clothes, began walking toward them. At first, Lena panicked inside. She wondered if they were upset, maybe offended that someone without a professional background had taken the stage. Her aunt stepped closer, protective in a quiet way. But as the guests approached, their expressions weren't angry. They were gentle, curious. A tall man with silver hair was the first to speak. "Young lady," he said kindly, "that was beautiful." Another woman nodded. "Your music had a feeling that many trained players forget to show." A couple standing behind them smiled warmly. "Your performance reminded us of why live music can be magical," the woman said softly. Lena felt overwhelmed. She kept her hands close together, her fingers interlocked tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. It was all she could manage. The silver-haired man asked, "Where did you learn to play?" Lena hesitated. She didn't want to lie. "Didn't have lessons," she admitted quietly. "I practiced on my own." It surprised them even more. "No lessons at all?" Someone asked. She shook her head. A few of the guests exchanged looks that showed real admiration now, not simply politeness. One woman leaned in slightly. "You must continue. You have something rare." Lena didn't know what she had. She only knew she loved music and that it made the world feel softer. Her aunt gently placed a hand on her back, guiding her so the crowd wouldn't overwhelm her. "Thank you all," her aunt said politely. "She's very grateful." Lena nodded again. Her cheeks felt warm. She couldn't believe guests like these people she had never thought she would even speak to were now complimenting her. After a few more kind words, the guests returned to their seats. The event continued, though the energy in the hall had completely changed. Something quieter, something more heartfelt, lingered in the room. Lena and her aunt stepped back to the staff area, where workers greeted her with wide eyes. "You played so beautifully," one of the servers said. "I didn't know you could do that," another whispered. Still shocked, someone patted her shoulder. Someone else smiled at her like she was a little bit of a miracle. Lena tried to smile back, but everything inside her felt too big, too overwhelming, like she had suddenly stepped into a world she didn't know how to walk in. Her aunt led her to a quiet corner where they could sit for a moment. "Breathe," her aunt said gently. "Just breathe, Lena." She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. "I didn't think they would clap," she whispered. Her aunt smiled softly. "People can surprise you. Tonight you surprised them." Lena opened her eyes and looked down at her hands. They were still trembling lightly. "Do you think I really played well?" "I think you played from the heart," her aunt replied. And that's what people felt. Before Lena could say anything else, the coordinator returned, holding a small envelope. "This is for you," he said. Lena blinked. "For me?" He nodded. "A small token of appreciation from the organizers. You saved the evening. I know you didn't come here expecting anything like this, but you deserve it." Lena carefully took the envelope with unsure hands. She didn't open it right away. The gesture alone felt unreal. "Thank you," she whispered. The coordinator smiled genuinely. "I hope you continue playing. You have a gift." And then he left to handle the rest of the event. Lena looked at the envelope, then at her aunt. "Should I open it?" Her aunt nodded with an encouraging smile. When Lena opened it, she found a small note of thanks and a folded bill far larger than she had ever held in her hands. Her heart jumped. "Auntie." Her aunt looked at the amount and covered her mouth. "Oh my goodness. They gave you this much?" Lena felt dizzy. "I've never seen this amount before." Her aunt hugged her, holding her close. "You earned it, my dear." But Lena wasn't thinking about money. She was thinking about the applause, the music, the piano, and something new stirred inside her, something that felt both exciting and frightening. Hope. Hope bigger than anything she had allowed herself to imagine. She tucked the envelope safely into her small bag and stood up slowly. "Auntie, do you think I could ever play like that on a real stage again?" Her aunt looked at her aunt, and her eyes Lena saw belief. "Yes," she said softly but firmly. "I think you could." Lena felt her chest tighten with emotion. But the night wasn't over. The hall had more surprises waiting. Some people had been so moved by her music that they weren't ready to let her walk away. So quietly, as Lena and her aunt prepared to leave the staff area and return to their duties, a young man, one of the assistant coordinators, approached them again. "Excuse me?" he said with a polite tone. "Several guests have been asking if you'll play one more piece before the night ends." Lena froze. "One more?" She whispered. "Yes," he said. They want to hear you again." Her heart pounded so hard she felt it in her throat. Her aunt squeezed her hand. "It's up to you, my dear." Lena swallowed nervously. She wasn't sure she had the courage to walk out there again. The first time had been terrifying enough. Could she do it again? Could she risk failing in front of them, now that they expected more? But then she remembered something. The feeling of touching the piano, the feeling of her music filling the room, the sound of applause, and the tiny whisper of hope that had just begun to grow inside her. She looked up slowly, her voice quiet but steady. I can try." The assistant coordinator smiled with relief. "Thank you. You won't regret it." Lena wasn't so sure, but she was ready to try as she walked toward the stage again. Her steps small but determined, the hall began to quiet once more. The guests saw her return and straightened in their seats with renewed interest. She reached the piano, took the seat again, and placed her hands above the keys. This time, there was no whisper of doubt, only the steady beat of her heart and the quiet promise she made to herself. If she was given a chance to be heard, she would not waste it. The hall stayed quiet for a long moment after Lena finished the last few notes. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel heavy or awkward. Instead, it felt full, almost like the room was holding its breath. She kept her hands on the piano keys, not ready to move yet, as if the sound still lived somewhere between her fingers. She didn't dare look up. She didn't know what she would see. Her heart beat fast, but not from fear this time. It felt different. It felt like something inside her had finally opened. All those years of practicing on old keys, all those moments she believed she would never belong in a room like this, they all came back to her at once. Then she heard a single clap. Just one. It echoed across the room. She wondered if she had imagined it, but when she raised her head a little, she saw a man near, the back of the hall standing with both hands coming together again, and then another person joined him. And another. Within seconds, the hall filled with applause that rose so quickly it almost startled her. People stood up from their tables. Some wiped their eyes. Others simply stared at her with a look she had never seen directed at her before. Something like respect mixed with disbelief. Lena sat frozen for a moment. It didn't feel real. She had come with her aunt, expecting to sit quietly in a corner while the rich crowd enjoyed their event. She had never imagined they would clap for her like this, as if she had just done something extraordinary. Her aunt stood near the side wall, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wet. She wasn't someone who cried easily, but now she looked like she was trying hard to keep herself steady. A woman wearing a sparkling dress approached the stage first. Her eyes were shiny, and she placed her hand gently on Lena's shoulder. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "Truly beautiful." Lena didn't know how to answer, so she simply nodded. More people walked toward the piano, forming a small circle around her. Some wanted to thank her. Others wanted to ask where she learned to play like that. Someone even asked if she had recorded any music. Lena felt overwhelmed in a way she had never experienced before. She had always been invisible in places like this. Tonight, suddenly, everyone saw her. One of the guests, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and soft features, stepped closer and spoke gently. "I felt every note you played," she said. "It was like you were telling a story without using any words." Lena heard sincerity in her voice, and it made her chest feel warm. "Thank you," Lena said softly. Her voice was small, but her gratitude was big. The event organizers soon approached too, looking both relieved and amazed. "You saved the evening," he said, shaking his head as if still trying to understand how she could play so well. "I don't know how to thank you. Everyone is talking about your performance." Lena didn't know what to say, so she simply smiled. The crowd slowly returned to their tables. But the atmosphere had completely changed. People who were earlier focused on showing off their clothes or talking about business were now discussing her performance, guessing where she might have trained. Wondering how someone so young could play with such emotion, her aunt walked up to her once the group around the piano faded. She reached out and touched Lena's cheek lightly. "You did it," she whispered. "Your mother would be so proud right now." Hearing her mother mentioned made Lena's eyes sting, but she tried not to cry. They moved away from the stage slowly, but even then people kept greeting her. Some offered compliments. Others simply nodded with a warm smile, the kind that made her feel like she finally existed in a place she had never belonged. After a little while, Lena and her aunt found a quiet corner near where the decorators had set up some fresh flowers. It felt calmer there, away from the noise. Her aunt squeezed her hand gently. "Are you okay?" she asked. Lena nodded. "I think so. It's just a lot." Her voice shook a little, but her aunt understood. "You earned every clap you heard tonight," her aunt said. "Don't ever think you didn't. You've worked so hard all these years. People finally saw what I've always seen in you." Those words made Lena's throat tighten. She wasn't used to praise. She was used to staying in the background soon. The event organizer called for attention again, wanting to continue the program. But before moving on, he made an announcement. Before we proceed, I think we should take a moment to appreciate the young lady who stepped in when we needed help the most. Her performance was truly unforgettable." He gestured in Lena's direction. Everyone applauded again, even louder than before. Lena felt her face grow warm. She didn't know where to look, so she glanced down at the floor. She wasn't used to being the center of anything. She had always lived her life quietly, helping her aunt when she could, practicing music when she had time, and dreaming only in moments when she was alone. As the night went on, she noticed more people glancing her way, not with judgment this time, but with curiosity and admiration. Some even waved at her from across the room. She and her aunt stayed near their little corner until a man approached a man who seemed different from the others. He wasn't loud. He didn't seem interested in showing off. He walked with a calm, thoughtful air. He introduced himself simply and politely. He said he had been listening from the back of the hall and wanted to know more about her. He asked how she had learned to play. Lena told him she practiced on an old keyboard at home, one with a few keys that sometimes didn't work. She didn't try to hide anything. She just told the truth. The man listened carefully, and she could tell he wasn't pretending. He truly seemed interested. Her aunt watched quietly beside her, trying not to interrupt. He eventually smiled and said, "You're playing. It has something rare, something real. Not just skill, but heart. Not everyone has that." His words made Lena blush. He didn't say much more, but the look he gave her stayed gentle and thoughtful. Before leaving, he handed her a small card. "If you ever want to talk about your music," he said, "please reach out." She nodded, though she wasn't sure if she would ever be brave enough to actually call. After he left, her aunt leaned closer and whispered, "I think he sees something in you." "Something big," Lena didn't answer. She didn't want to assume anything. But a small hope lit up inside her. As the evening slowly ended, guests began saying their goodbyes. Even then, a few people walked up to her one last time, just to thank her or compliment her again. When she and her aunt finally stepped outside into the cool night air, Lena felt a strange mix of exhaustion and excitement. She hadn't expected any of this. She had come here thinking she would simply watch the event from the sidelines, helping her aunt carry things if needed. Instead, she had played in front of people who didn't expect anything from her, and changed the whole room. The sky was dark, but the lights from the hall behind them glowed softly. Lena looked up at the stars. For the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe her dreams weren't as impossible as she once thought. Her aunt locked her arm with Lena's as they walked toward the gate. "Tonight was just the beginning," she said with quiet certainty. Lena didn't know what the future would bring yet. She held her aunt's arm tightly and let the cool breeze wrap around her. Deep down, she felt something she never dared to feel before: hope. Real and steady, rising inside her like a new kind of music. She was just beginning to understand. The night after the event felt unreal to Lena, even when she got home. Slipped out of her aunt's borrowed dress and lay down on her thin mattress, her heart refused to settle. She kept replaying the sound of the applause in her mind, wondering if it had really happened. It felt like something from someone else's life, not hers. Her small room was quiet, except for the distant noise of traffic outside. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything about her mother. About the hall filled with well-dressed guests. About the way they had looked at her as though she had done something that mattered. She touched her fingertips gently, remembering the feel of the piano keys beneath them. She didn't know if she would ever get a chance like that again. The thought scared her a little, but it also filled her with a strange kind of energy. She finally drifted to sleep, holding the memory close like something fragile she didn't want to drop. The next morning, she woke with a soft ache in her chest. Not a painful ache, but the kind that comes after something big has shifted inside you. Her aunt was already in the kitchen, preparing tea. She looked up when Lena entered. "You slept late," her aunt said, her voice warm. "Big night?" Lena nodded, sitting down quietly. "It feels like a dream." Her aunt smiled softly. "Dreams start somewhere. Maybe yours started last night." She placed a cup of tea in front of her. "Drink, you'll need energy. Something tells me life is about to get busy for you." Lena didn't know what her aunt meant, but a small flutter of excitement rose inside her. She sipped the tea slowly, trying to calm her nerves. A few hours passed before anything unusual happened. She was sweeping the front yard when she heard a car stop outside their gate. It wasn't a fancy car, but it was clean and neat. With a quiet hum that didn't fit their street, the same man from the event, the one who had handed her his card, stepped out. He wore simple clothes, nothing flashy, but he carried an air of confidence and calm. Her aunt came outside just as Lena froze, broom in hand. He greeted them politely. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said. "I tried calling the number on the card I gave you, but perhaps you didn't check yet." Lena felt her cheeks warm. She hadn't even looked at the card since getting home. It was still tucked in the pocket of the dress she wore last night. I'm sorry," Lena said softly. I didn't I didn't know you would come," he smiled kindly. "That's all right. I wanted to speak with you in person anyway." Her aunt invited him inside, and he sat at their small dining table, looking comfortable even in the modest surroundings. Lena sat beside her aunt, unsure what this visit meant. He looked at Lena directly, his tone gentle but sincere. "I thought a lot about your performance last night. It wasn't just skill. It was emotion. It was honesty. And that kind of playing. It's rare." Lena lowered her eyes, feeling shy. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm part of a music foundation," he continued. "We support young artists who have talent but limited resources. When I heard you play, I knew you were someone who deserved an opportunity." Her aunt's breath caught slightly. Lena heard it. She felt her own chest tighten. "What kind of opportunity?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "Scholarship," he said. "Full training. Real instruments. Proper teachers. Support for performances. Everything you need to grow as a musician." Lena blinked several times. Her aunt covered her mouth with one hand, tears filling her eyes. "Sir," her aunt said softly, "are you serious? She has dreamed of learning properly since she was little, but we could never afford even one lesson." The man nodded. "I'm completely serious. Talent like hers shouldn't be hidden because of circumstances." Turned back to Lena. "This choice is completely yours. No pressure. No deadlines. I only want you to know the door is open for you." Lena stared at him. She felt a wave of emotion rise through her fear, happiness, disbelief, everything mixing at once. She wasn't used to big decisions. Her life had always been about doing what needed to be done, not dreaming about what could be. "I don't know if I'm good enough," she admitted quietly. "You are," he replied without hesitation. "But even if you weren't, that's what learning is for. We help you grow. You just need to take the first step." Her aunt placed a gentle hand on Lena's arm. "This is your chance," she whispered. "Don't doubt yourself. Not now." Lena looked between the two of them. Her hands trembled slightly. She finally nodded. "I want to try," she said, her voice small but firm. The man smiled. "Good. I'll arrange the paperwork. You can start next week. And don't worry about transportation. We will handle everything." Lena couldn't speak. Her aunt stood up suddenly and hugged Lena tightly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Your mother is smiling somewhere," she whispered. "I know she is." The man left shortly afterward, leaving behind a quiet house filled with overwhelming hope. Lena sat for a long time, staring at her hands again. She felt like her whole life had been rewritten in a moment. The next week, everything changed. She visited the foundation building with her aunt. It was bright and filled with instruments, pianos of different sizes, rooms with glass walls, shelves stacked with sheet music. Everything looked so new and expensive that Lena hesitated to touch anything at. First, a teacher greeted her warmly and led her to a practice room. "Let's hear you play," the teacher said. Lena felt nervous again, but she sat at the piano, letting her fingers find their place. The room was quiet as she began to play her favorite melody, the one she played at home when she missed her mother. The teacher listened closely, nodding slowly as she moved through each note. When she finished, he smiled gently. "You have a gift," he said. "But more importantly, you have heart. That cannot be taught. The rest will teach you." Lena felt something settle in her chest. For the first time, she believed him. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Lena practiced every day. She learned how to read music properly, how to control her hands, how to express emotion through sound in ways she never knew before. Her teachers encouraged her, guiding her without making her feel small. Her aunt watched her grow with quiet pride, always waiting outside the building after every practice session. One afternoon, after nearly a year of training, the foundation held a recital. Students from different levels would perform. Lena was nervous, but excited. This time, she wasn't stepping in as an emergency player. She was part of the program. She sat backstage listening to the murmurs of the audience beyond the curtain. There were parents, guests, donors, and strangers who loved music. Her teacher came to her side. "Remember why you play," he said. "That's all you need." When her turn came, Lena walked onto the stage. The lights felt warm on her face. She sat at the piano, breathing slowly, calming her nerves, and then she began. She played the same melody she had performed at the charity event. But this time, it felt different. It was fuller, steadier, shaped by the growth she had earned through months of work. The audience went silent, listening to every rise and fall of her notes as she played. She thought about her mother, her aunt, the small room she grew up in, the broken keyboard she learned on, the whispers of the wealthy crowd the night everything changed. The memories wrapped around her music, giving it depth she couldn't describe in words. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a moment, just like before, and then the applause came. Loud. Warm, genuine. Lena felt tears fill her eyes, but she kept smiling. Her aunt stood in the crowd, clapping with her whole heart, proud beyond words. That night, as they walked home together, Lena felt calm, not overwhelmed, like before, but peaceful. She finally felt like she belonged on a stage. She wasn't the quiet girl sitting in the back of a hall anymore. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't just hoping. She was becoming who she was always meant to be, and the world for once was listening.